Welcome to Tripod, the Tricycle creative podcast, where I mix digital marketing, entrepreneurship, and content creation into one show to help creative business owners. I have an exciting show today with Dr. Lori Baker-Schena. She's an educator, an entrepreneur, professional speaker, and leadership coach who's devised something called the leadership brand. She's on a mission to help people move their careers or their businesses forward through positivity and a solution-oriented mindset. In this episode, we're going to learn about the leadership brand and how you can get started in building yours, why effective and efficient communication is your responsibility when you're a business owner, why it's okay for you to fail, how to deal with clients when they don't know what they want, and a fun random question. If you're new here, remember to subscribe and rate Tripod wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to go to the show notes for this episode at tripodpodcast.com, where you can download a free guide, courtesy of Dr. Lori, 10 questions to ask yourself when developing a leadership brand.
You're listening to Tripod, a podcast produced by Tricycle Creative to help safely navigate creative business owners through the worlds of digital marketing, strategic content creation, and business growth. Host Ross Erosion is a marketing consultant, content creator, and entrepreneur who brings you helpful tips, social media updates, inspiring interviews, and his own unique perspective on how to tell your story and grow your business. So if you're interested in being a better marketer, business owner, or creator, sit back, relax, and let's get pedaling.
You know what I've started watching recently?
What?
I really got into Anthony Bourdain, No Reservations.
Yes.
I never watched it before, but I love to travel. And since I haven't been able to travel, it's like living vicariously through it. And I don't know. It's made me feel okay about not traveling, I guess.
And why is that?
I mean, it's like I'm still seeing different stuff. It's not the same. I'm not experiencing it. But at least it's like, I don't know, somehow scratching a tiny itch that I'm seeing different places.
Absolutely. And I trust you like food then, because that's what he really focuses on. And I'm a huge foodie myself.
I do. I love traveling just to see new places, but the food also is I mean, I'm not going to lie, huge component.
Huge component. When I travel, the food is, I think, probably the number one component. And the restaurants and the local places where you can't find, too many tourists. That's always so great. Anyways,
you're not here to hear about all the food stuff. Well, maybe you, the listener, are. And welcome. This is Tripod, the Tricycle Creative Podcast. I am here with Lori Baker-Schena, and thank you for joining me today.
It is so great to be here. I can't even begin to tell you.
I'm really excited because we connected, and you talk about and created this concept, if you will, that I wanted to share with my listeners. I was really intrigued by it. But before we kind of jump into that, why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself and even your business?
Okay, well, I've had what I call a 3-chapter life so far. And I think it's going to be 3 chapters. I can't see a fourth, but you never know. You never say never. My first chapter was starting my own marketing and public relations business. And I did that in my late 20s after going through several jobs and realizing I couldn't work for anybody. So I had to work for myself. And
you realized that early. Good for you.
Yes. And Ross, I have to tell you, young people need to use their 20s to figure out what they want and what they don't want. Because you don't want to get stuck in a job that you're miserable in. And in your 20s, it's easier to move around than when you get more established in your 30s or 40s. So I learned that pretty early on that I couldn't be micromanaged. I was a hard worker, but I needed my own terms and I wanted my own place and bandwidth to do it. So about 3 years later, so I'm going strong. I really loved it. I got a call from my university where I had gone to school from my BA and my MBA, and they needed an emergency hire for a professor. And I have to tell you, I never taught anything in my life, but they needed someone to teach beginning reporting. And so a couple lessons there. Number one, professors don't need to know how to teach. There's no credential program for professors. So those of you who have some really phenomenal professors in universities and not so wonderful, a lot of them never were taught how to teach or how to motivate. So there's that. Anyway, so I was so nervous that first day. I remember shaking, just taking roll. But I ended up loving it. And that ended up becoming a 25-year career in teaching, as well as the marketing and public relations business. So I was doing both things. And then I decided, you know what, I really am very interested in organizations. So I got a doctorate in organizational leadership. And I'm cooking along, and all of a sudden, happens to many of us, I'm sure people in your audience can relate to this, I got struck by a cancer, and that was when I was 55. And it really woke me up to the fact that, I really want to be a motivational speaker, and I really want to take my leadership expertise and expand upon it beyond the university setting. And I was kind of done with, I'm still doing marketing and public relations. I love it, but I really wanted to expand that. So I left my tenured track university job, and I started Baker-Schena Communications, the leadership part of it, and I haven't looked back. It's been 7 years, and I am loving every second of every day because I'm doing what I love. And so my hope is that people who I coach and people who I speak to love their jobs as much.
There's so many things there that I love, right? I love the three chapter, because I feel very similarly. I've gone through my career and done dramatically different things. Started in broadcasting, went into recruiting, that built into kind of like collegiate marketing, which led into digital marketing, which led into video, which led into, I also then went into education, similar like you, and now I find myself an agency owner. And I don't know how many chapters that is. I think they are combined into them, right? Don't get me wrong. But I love your point about when you're in your 20s, or at least when you're starting your career, you need to explore. And I think the one skill that I got better at along the way is figuring out when I was done.
Yes, that is so true. That is so profound.
I was so much faster. I think it took me my first job out of college a couple years. But then my next one, I was probably in it for a year, 2 years too long. And then as I took new jobs, I think I really got better at recognizing I'm not as passionate about it as I used to be. I need to move on. And that's okay. And it's scary, but that's okay. Because for me, and I think you're very similar, if I don't give a crap, I'm not going to give my 100. And I think that's been something I've even struggled with, but now recognize better. My wife helped me do this. I can't give less than 100% to things I do. I used to think I could. I can't help myself. Probably like you, I'm a type A. I can't give, I don't know what 50% effort looks like. I just don't know. So I have to say, can I give 100% to this? And if I can't, I probably shouldn't do it.
That is absolutely so right on. And I'll tell you something, it takes energy to give 100%. And you learn as you grow older and you only have a certain bandwidth of energy, Ross. You only get so much, all right? So where to put it, you don't want to waste your life putting your bandwidth and energy into something that you're miserable with or something you just can't get behind. And you're not going to do as well as something that you really enjoy. So I think you've discovered that, and you've also discovered how you're using your energy, which is, equates to that 100% you're talking about. And that is where your passion is, and that's why you're so good at what you do, because you've recognized that.
And let's talk about energy. You talked about the cancer scare, for lack of a better word. I think people understand that they only have so much hours energy in a day, but let's even blow that out further. There's a finite amount of energy that you have in your life. And so I think that's something to think about when you are a new entrepreneur, when you are a small business owner, when you're thinking about starting a side hustle or a business. These are things, and I know it's super scary, and I cannot sit here and say, hey, give up the cushy job for this. But I think that it's something that you need to like incrementally build towards. And you need to be aware that, listen, sometimes you do got to jump in and jump all in because you're just going to be straddling the fence otherwise. So that brings me very nicely to something that you've kind of come up with, or you talk a lot about, and that's the leadership brand. Talk to me. What is the leadership brand?
Well, Ross, you know, being in your field, that companies use branding so that they can be recognized. All right. So you've got, and everyone has their favorite brand, you know, from Nike to Apple to whatever their brand is. But people also who are successful and are strong leaders also have a brand. So if you think for a minute about the leaders who you admire, whether it's celebrities or political or personal leaders in your life, they have a brand. When they walk into the room, you know who they are and what you can expect from them and their value. And that's something that just doesn't happen overnight. People create that brand, create that, and it takes a long time. I think some of the people that are really good at it, like Michelle Obama, she's got her own brand. You know what she stands for and where her heart is, right? Some other celebrities, politicians, even the people coming up like Kamala Harris, she too is starting to create a vice presidential brand, but she brings her own brand into it. So interestingly enough, a brand is not your reputation, because your reputation is what's behind you. Your brand is what you are today and where you want to go tomorrow. So leaders and business owners and entrepreneurs need to think, who am I? And when I walk into the room, what will people think of me? And what value do I bring to them so that they'll use my products? Because entrepreneurs should know, especially in these days and age, you're not just buying a product, you're buying the person behind the product. And those of you who are speakers or who are photographers or who do things that aren't products but services, that is even exaggerated because they are buying you as that brand. So we really need to be mindful of who we are and what we offer, what our strengths are, and that sort of thing. And that helps you figure out, Ross, how to show up in the world.
I think it's all the more important when you are a small business owner. Listen, I'm not saying that you need to be some multimillionaire, and I don't think you are either, to have your leadership brand. I think it's incredibly important when you're a small business entrepreneur, because more so than with a corporation, people are buying into you.
Absolutely. And I started my leadership brand right when I started my own business. Some of the value I brought to people, gave 100% like you do. I was always there on time. I was always willing to go where I needed to go to get a project done. I wasn't afraid to work hard. I returned phone calls on time. I really tried to give really great copy. I'm a writer. So, and I continued to build on that. And so people started to depend on that brand, that brand of Baker-Schena Communications. And the same holds true when I give a speech out in the world. I haven't been out in the world, Ross, in a year. But when I'm actually speaking to it in person, by virtual, I have a wonderful virtual practice. But out in the world, when I walk on that stage, people know what they're gonna get. They're going to get the energy. They're going to get the positivity. They're going to get really practical advice from me, and that brand is what really sells me. So that's what we're talking about. And entrepreneurs, no matter what you're selling, whether it's you or a product, you need to build that sense that there's value there and that you are doing something for the client that is special and really you care about the client. All these things go into becoming your own person in the entrepreneurial world. It's just not, opening up a website and starting to, try to do business. There's a lot more to it.
Well, I mean, I think you have to know you. If you're a solopreneur entrepreneur, very important. But if you then become a small business owner where you're hiring people, you want consistency. You want to convey even some amount of expectations of this is what we believe, how we believe work should be done. That is kind of encapsulated or lives under or within the leadership brand. And how can you expect to convey that and work with clients if you haven't figured that out for yourself, right? What is important to you?
Exactly. And it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to look inside you and figure out your strengths and your weaknesses and what you bring to the table. It's not only an intellectual thing, but it's an emotional thing. It's how do you build trust? All these things that when you're working so hard to build a business, to start a business, or to get ahead in a career in a corporation, you don't think about these things yet. These are the most important things that you need to think about. And I call it mindfulness. How do you show up and how do you want people to see you show up? And once you wrap your head around that and you start getting control of that, it really elevates you and makes you feel strong and confident because you show up with a brand that you believe in and that people will believe for you. Very important.
To be fair, too, and this is something I've learned now, I think I'm 3 years in. It's also blurry. I'm not really sure, right? But I'm enjoying the ride. It's just blurry along the way.
You can see your hair with that.
Yeah. Okay. I lost my train of thought when you said that. I'm sorry. My hair got whipped back. Okay.
You're 3 years in.
When you can start to figure out who you are, who your business is, what you do, the types of people you work with even, it starts to make that easier to work with and attract clients. And it makes it okay when you lose a client because they weren't a good fit. When I started, you lose a client because of that, and you're destroyed. Oh, that's money I could have had. But now when I sit here, if I don't get a client because we're just not a good match, that's good for both of us.
Absolutely. But Ross, it takes time to get there. Absolutely. I remember my first couple of years, I took every person who came through my doors, and I was writing. I was so out of my element. It was just, I ended up being in healthcare, but I remember doing a brochure for a software company, and I did a brochure for a.
To your point, to your earlier point about being young and exploring. That's also why it's good, because like what you're saying, being out of your element, you're more nimble, you got more energy. When you're young, you could probably figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I think if you're able to let go of that fear, there are a lot of fears surrounding people who actually are doing, being an entrepreneur at any age. If you can let go of that fear and try those things and see what works and what doesn't, that's just going to add not only to your bottom line, but to your own personal happiness. And Ross, that's where I am. I mean, there's a ton of business coaches out there who can tell you how to make more money and how to streamline your production and this sort of thing. And I have an MBA. I probably could do that too. But that's not, my big thing is having you enjoy this journey. Be happy while you're building, be happy while you're falling, be happy while things are going really bad. be happy when things are going good. Just enjoy the entire journey. Because I know when I work with entrepreneurs just starting, it's fun being on that journey. And once you get really well established and things started kind of humming along, you lose a little bit of that joy. Because it's become humdrum almost. So really enjoying those early years of screwing up and learning and working all into the night and going crazy and all that, because at the end of the day, you are going to be successful, and then you'll have different joys, but it's not that early joy.
You had mentioned, obviously, it takes some time to develop this leadership brand, but just like anything that takes time, you got to start. And you have been incredibly generous. You have given me, and by extension, the listeners, kind of a starter guide, right? And you can find this, guys, in the show notes at tripodpodcast.com. I have the document there. You can grab it. It's 10 questions to ask yourself when developing a leadership brand. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that document and what people can kind of expect from that?
Absolutely. So Ross, we talked about we have to get to know each other, or know each other and know ourselves and everybody. But you got to know yourself, right? So where do you start? It's really tough to figure out. So some of the questions that I use, and I do a lot of workshops on this, is some questions that'll help get you started. So one of the most important one is, what do you do better than anyone else? There's 20 people selling tennis balls. Why are your tennis balls the best? What are you doing and how are you doing that so that yours are the best? But what do you do that's the best? So figure that out. And what is the unique way that you achieve results? For example, I am very much, before I do any kind of brochure writing when I was in my marketing business, I would insist on speaking to the highest level person I could in an organization. And that always helped me because I got the top person to tell me what their vision was. So I didn't have to keep rewriting it as it went up the ladder. That was a unique way to achieve results.
I love that, just that even singular piece of advice for creatives out there who are listening to this, because oftentimes they will be afraid to ask that. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to regret not asking it, because in my own experience, and this is why we have my program called the Roadmap Sessions, you could be dealing with clients and the clients themselves are not aligned. And when you are working with them, it is your job almost as the outsider to do the due diligence and to even bring them together. If you walk away from that project and you've made them better because they now understand where they're at, they're each other's positions, that is an added super extra value in addition to, like you just said, a brochure, a tangible product.
Absolutely. And that is where I started kind of getting interested in leadership too, because I'd be talking to people and realizing some of the dysfunction in organizations and the lack of communication, which is a big thing for me. And helping to clarify that and crystallize it. And now as a leadership coach, I go into corporations and try to, minimize the corporate dysfunction and the corporate, and enhance the communication. And it really helps that I'm a marketing person and a PR person because communication, in our business is so important. And so bringing that into the corporate setting. So that's just the first question. What do people come to you for? And to really, what do they come? For me, that answer is that I am always pivoting to the positive. Even when I give a very intense training on how to run a team or how to conflict management, I always end with an upbeat, several slides on how to be positive in a negative world. I mean, that's not even, I wasn't even hired to do that. Yeah. But I do it. It's my signature. And I started it when I was a college professor. I taught my subject matter, And I loved my kids, but they needed motivation. They never said, you can do this. You go out there and do that. So I found at the end of the class period, let's get some positive energy, some positive motivation. So that is my brand, that positivity brand. It's in my, and that's what's in my logo and in my slogans. But it really comes from deep inside because I'm a really positive person and I believe in positivity to move you forward. So bringing it back to the leadership brand workshop and worksheet, I'm thinking my worksheet, you really need to think about who you are how you show up. So these kind of questions, once you get this, then you can start creating habits and a look and a communication that you can communicate who you are. And it's, look at, how long does it take to build up your core in the gym? When you are allowed to go into the gym? I'm in LA. We haven't been to a gym in
my core
months.
has
He's
seen better days.
But it takes but it takes a long time to build up your physical core, right? Same thing with this. It takes time to build a brand, but by giving it a shot and thinking about it, it's really going to not only elevate you, but also elevate your company.
You had mentioned, for lack of better words, communication failure, right? Or dysfunction maybe is a better word, because unfortunately it doesn't always fail. It limps along in a terrible condition, totally broken, and people just keep duct taping it together. I've been there, been in the corporate worlds, now as an entrepreneur working with clients and things like that. Do you think that is the most common mistake that people who come to you are creative business owners? Is that a common thing you hear or even discover with them?
I think it all boils down to communication. I really do. I think people, let's talk about giving someone an assignment, a project. A lot of leaders just give you a project to do without giving you enough specifics so that you can do it. So that lack of communication about what that leader wants, what that supervisor wants, and what the end product should look like, just that basic thing is enough to throw an employee off the deep end, because they're not quite sure what is expected of them. So we don't know how to speak so that other people that we need hear us. Because I'm speaking to you, Ross, I'm going to speak differently than I'm going to talk to high school kids. We communicate to different people on different levels. So just the fact how to assign things, or how to speak when you speak with each other on a team, the respect, are you talking over people? And it's doubly hard now because we're working from home. So I've done a lot of work on keeping, virtual teams engaged, because it takes twice the energy to communicate, to pick up the phone even and say, how are you doing? How's your day? What can I help you with? We've lost that. We've lost, that. It's so hard. So,
or even those incidentals where if you work in an office, water cooler, vending machine, break room, those
so
incidentals, touch points, you just don't have them anymore.
It's so important. And that, again, is communication. You're not communicating. So there's answers to all that. But at the end of the day, communication, if you can communicate with your employees, with your peers, with your clients, with everyone who you know, if you can do it clearly and with positivity, you won't believe how successful you can be.
I think what's interesting there when we're talking about communication, I think a lot of people think that's someone else's job. And throughout my career, that's, I would like to think, where I didn't allow that. Communication is everyone's job. And the thoroughness, the explanation, to your point now, as a business owner who works with a team of creatives in a lot of cases, where they have tremendous creative abilities, but they're not necessarily marketers, I need to take the time and say to them, here's my initial thought. Here's what the client wants or has expressed. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. coming at it from all those different approaches and explaining them. Because particularly I have a marketing assistant who creates a lot of my content, and I take the time to explain to her, let me show you and explain to you how this piece, this whatever, is going to go into the machine. And when she understands that, it helps her to problem solve and to create the best thing because she understands its application. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of situations, people could be more forthcoming, but they're not because they're protective over their own jobs. I came from radio where, trust me, people are cutthroat, right? They get a job and they hang on to it. They don't ever let it go. They cling on to that thing and they go along for the ride as long as they can.
Absolutely. And that knowledge is power. And they don't want to give it away. And that's not a good leader. And
there's a difference between a manager, maybe not even a good manager, but a manager and a leader. You can be both. But really, just because you're one or the other doesn't necessarily mean it's like a Venn diagram. You have manager, you have leader, and you have a little overlap. And most people don't fall into that overlap.
Exactly. And it's just a sad, and that's why people are miserable in their jobs. If you think about those of you who are listening out here, that the jobs that you've been most miserable at, how was the communication?
Oh, pits probably. I mean, mine. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big thing. When people talk about is that why they leave is because of like their manager. If you really probably dig into that, communication is a big part.
Exactly. So
how they talk to them.
Absolutely. So we really need, as part of your leadership brand, not only becoming a good communicator, but communicating your brand. It's the way you write an email. It's the way you show up at a meeting. It's all those little things that add up to say, you know what? I trust this person. I want to do business with this person. Trust is big. And it's all about the little things. For example, at speaking gigs, Zoom meetings, I am always on time. I just, that's my brand. People can count on it. They're often surprised, but it's really, really important, especially if you're like a speaker and you want to be on stage right on time. You don't want people to wait. So these little things add up to people being able to depend on you and feel confident because they feel confident about the work or the service you're going to deliver. It's so crucial. It's so crucial for success.
Nothing drives me crazier than consistent tardiness.
Me too.
It drives me bananas because I make a point to be on time early almost everywhere. And I feel like it's a disrespect to me, but if it's something for the client, to the client also and to their time. So on that note of being a good communicator and being on time, let's take a quick break and hear from my sponsor. It probably comes as no surprise to you that Instagram is the favorite social media platform among creative business owners. Instagram also continues to find new and interesting ways for small businesses to generate revenue, promote their products, their service, their expertise. But Instagram does have a major limitation: external links. They won't work in your captions, and you can only use them in stories if you have a large follower count. Sure, they give you link in bio, but that's just one link. Problem solved with solo.to. Solo.to is one bio link for everything. When you create a solo.to account, you can showcase tons of links for your business. And if you're a creator like me, you can even embed music, videos, and podcasts right there on Instagram from your favorite platforms. Want to see solo.to in action? head on over to Tricycle Creative's Instagram account at HelloTricycle and click the link in our bio. Solo.to offers a free plan to get you started, and you can upgrade for as little as $1 a month. Use the referral link in this episode's description and in the show notes, and you can save 10% off any upgrade package within 48 hours of signing up. Solo.to. It's one bio link for everything. Hey guys, we're back. Thank you for joining us as Tripod. And if you've already forgotten, I don't know what's going on with you, but our guest, Lori, has been so incredibly generous and has given us 10 questions to ask yourself when developing a leadership brand. You can find that tripodpodcast.com. So you talked about, Lori, your 3-chapter life.
Yes.
So I'm very interested to get your question or your answer to this question. Let's start with this one. It's okay for entrepreneurs to blank.
Fail.
Totally.
Fail.
I failed at a ton of stuff.
Fail
every day.
Fail often, fail fast, fail often. Fail often and fail fast.
And that's hard because when you're a creative business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, I'm going to tell you, high highs, low lows. If you can ride the plateau for a while, it's a dream.
It is. It's part of the package. That failure. It's quite a ride. And one of my early mentors, by the way, get a mentor. That's really a great tip. But one of my early mentors said to me when there was a typo or something in this big, beautiful piece that we did. This is in the day when we didn't have internet, right? So there was big, beautiful pieces of brochures. But anyway, he said to me, "What is going to happen? What is it going to matter 100 years from now?" And that little piece that just helped soothe my mind. But it also it's important to really be careful. But it really did help kind of take the edge off. What's it gonna matter 100 years from now?
So conversely, it's not okay for entrepreneurs to blank.
To not learn from the mistakes that they make. To play the victim and not take personal responsibility. Actually, there's two things. To not learn from it, but also to really not own it, not take responsibility for what they did that was part of that failure. And that is unfortunate.
It is. And I think it will ultimately be a business's demise.
Yes.
I like to think I'm pretty transparent on this podcast. And in the past month, I had a situation, we had a brutal client meeting. We came out of it and there were some things that we just had dropped the ball on. And that happens. And I could have just ran away and cried or blamed or made excuses. I didn't do any of that. You got to go to work. Let me put it this way. This is what you stop and you get sad and you get frustrated. But when you own a business and those things come up, that is the time when you prove your worth to your business. If you are a CEO, if you are a founder, you are chief problem solver in charge. And that is your role. And so I had to step into that. So I talked with the client, talked with our team, sat down, looked at what I got from both of them, looked at what the malfunction, the dysfunction was. Did we need a new process? We did, desperately. I devised a new process, shared it with my team, brought it to the client, implemented it, been monitoring it as we implement it because it's a brand new process for everyone. And I'm going to tell you, it has turned around that whole project in the course of 2 to 3 weeks. And that came out of a really shitty MIDI.
Absolutely. That is, you illustrated my point beautifully. You showed how you can learn from mistakes and from what, failure. Society shames failure. Ross, it makes me crazy that everyone's so afraid to fail. We had a whole generation, I hate to say you guys, I love my millennials, but their parents never let them fail.
You're not going to offend me.
And their parents never let them fail. And so that there's no problem solving capabilities there. It's just sad. That's a whole other topic. But the fact of the matter is, I tell my clients, stop making excuses. Do not make an excuse. Instead, figure out what you need to do. It's crucial.
And let me say this. Some of the best improvements to your business will come from the failures. This process I came up with, guess what? It's the new process we're using with every single client. And it makes a huge difference.
And this really adds to your leadership brand, Ross, because it shows you as a problem solver, a solution-oriented business owner with a distinctive process for doing what you do. And that is how that works. That's a beautiful, beautiful explanation. We didn't plan this, everyone in the audience.
Definitely
not at all. But it really, really illustrates my point beautifully, that this is what it takes. This is what it's all about. And this is the real joy and happy. I mean, there's deep lows here, but there is a lot of joy to figuring this stuff out. I mean, otherwise, why are you an entrepreneur? Just go back to work for somebody else.
It's true. I always said that if you're not doing it your own way, why are you even doing it? Like, go back, don't take on all the stress that comes with owning a business if you're not going to do it your own way. What's the point?
Absolutely.
So you touched on a little bit, and I want to hit it again because I made a note of it. You talked about positivity, how you end your speaking sessions and your when you were teaching with the positivity. Can you talk about the power of positivity in business? How that applies?
Absolutely. Nothing ever moves forward with negativity. Negativity never moves the needle at all. The only way you can move forward in life is by being positive. And being positive is a choice. We wake up every morning and we decide we're going to either have a good day or we're going to have a crappy day. And let me tell you something. Those of us who have survived accidents and cancer and are living to tell the tale, we're just happy to wake up. Yeah. That's the win, right? So everything else is just fun. It's frosting. But I choose to be happy. There's no point in not making that very conscious choice. And stuff's going to happen to you. Crap's going to be flying at you all day, every day. But figuring it out, how to work with it so you're positive, so that you're solution-oriented, so you know what you can control and what you can't, and focus on what you can control. All these things add up to being positive. And the best sports teams, the best companies to work for, the best cultures that companies create, all are based on positivity and that can-do attitude. And that's what I try to preach to everybody I know, because you're not going to get anywhere when you're negative.
And I think that, just so people understand, and I think you would agree, I think that's not to say that bad things won't happen.
They will happen. They will.
They absolutely will. Particularly if you're a business owner. I promise you, they're coming. They're coming.
But you can either say, seriously, you could have either walked out of that meeting, that horrible meeting, and beaten yourself up and said, I'm no good and this sucks and my business sucks. Or you can say, you know what? That sucked to feel that. It sucked to fail somebody because I want people to really be happy with what I do. But I am going to flip the script and figure out what positive things can come out of this. And that's how you do it. You can acknowledge the negativity, but flip to the positive.
I have one last thing. I didn't tell you about this, so I'm excited about revealing this. The people from my last couple of podcasts are now going to start catching on to this, but I have this set of cards. It's designed, I think they're called icebreakers. Yeah, icebreaker. I'll put a link in the show notes, anyone listening, if you want to check these out. Tripodpodcast.com. So I have a couple categories, and I just want you to pick a category, and I'll pick one of the random questions from that category. So there's 6 of them. So I don't know if you need to, but life, random. Now, deep. I'm going to warn you. I don't know if you should pick. I looked at some of the deep cards. They are true to form deep. It's a little heavy, but nonetheless. Experiences. If you could, and would you rather?
What was that first one?
Life.
I'll take life.
All right. Okay, here we go. Life. What was the first thing you remember buying with your own money?
Has to be books. I was able to. They had these like scholastic things, and it wasn't. I could buy books that weren't.
You mean like a book fair?
Yeah.
At school?
Yeah, exactly. And I could buy the book that I wanted versus the book that my parents wanted us. So you know what I'm saying? Like kind of like
I know what you're
Captain
saying.
Underpants. We didn't have Captain Underpants back then, but the Captain Underpants equivalent.
So
that or candy.
That's good. So let me tell you what mine was at the book fair. All us kids, we always wanted to get the Guinness book, right?
Yes.
That was good, you know, or a Where's Waldo book.
Yes.
I don't want to take away from either of those books, but for our parents, those didn't particularly have as much educational value.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
they wanted
That's
to
why.
have.
So I got the fun books. That's exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's exactly
Yeah.
it.
I remember the book fair stuff. It was good. You're right. That was one of the first instances where maybe you had some of your own money, or the parents said, we'll give you money, but you can pick out what you want.
Yeah.
My mom was always super supportive of me reading comic books, because at least I was reading.
Right.
And I still read comic books to this day. So.
What's the first thing you bought with your money?
Well, I mean, now you said your answer. I'm going to say that, but I'm going to think of something different. I mean, I'm going to wager a guess that it might have been like some sort of like handheld video game thing.
Yes.
Not like a super expensive one.
But like a Game Boy thing. Do you remember?
Yeah,
those little
yeah.
Game-
Like even cheaper, like a Tiger Electronics,
Yes.
for those of you out there. They're like a poor man's Game Boy. But everyone had one.
Yes.
I think I probably bought something like that. Or maybe, well, no. I was going to say maybe a CD. But I didn't get into music till later.
Yeah, I was going to
so
say you
don't
must
think
have
it was
been 10 or 11, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're wrapping up. It's Tripod, the Tricycle Creative Podcast. Lori, how can people find you? How can they connect with you? Please fire away.
The best way to find me is on my website, www.loribakerschena.com, and shoot me an email and let's chat.
Absolutely. I loved having you. And for all of you out there listening, please remember, for completely free, Lori has been awesome and created a 10 questions to ask yourself when developing a leadership brand. You can download it in the show notes, tripodpodcast.com. I will talk at you next time. And as always, until then, I encourage you to keep pedaling.
Thanks for listening to Tripod. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. For show notes and past episodes, go to tripodpodcast.com. Connect with Tricycle Creative on social media at Hello Tricycle and learn more about how we can help you with your marketing at tricycle-creative.com.